The rain hammered against the tall glass windows of a New York skyscraper, the kind of storm that made the city feel less alive, more hollow. Inside the corner office of the top floor sat Alexander Reed, the Millionaire CEO whose name appeared daily in headlines, whose company built half the tech the world used, and whose fortune made him untouchable. Yet, surrounded by walls of glass, awards, and silence, Alexander felt smaller than ever. His success had given him everything, mansions, private jets, power, but it had stolen something too, people. His father had been gone since childhood, his mother lost to illness in his 20s, and every friendship he once had was eroded by time, betrayal, or money. Now at 42, he lived in a penthouse alone, went home to empty dinners prepared by staff who barely spoke to him, and filled the silence with work that never ended. His calendar was full, but his heart was empty. His colleagues admired him, his rivals envied him, but no one loved him. And love was something he hadn't felt in years. That night, as the storm raged, Alexander left work later than usual, his driver pulling the sleek black car toward the quieter side of town. His company was sponsoring a charity gala at a children's hospital the next day, and though he rarely attended such events in person, something tugged at him this time. Perhaps guilt, perhaps restlessness, perhaps that gnawing loneliness that whispered even louder on nights like these. The next morning, when he arrived at the hospital, polished in his $1,000 suit, he expected the usual, a few polite handshakes, cameras flashing, and the comfort of distance. He knew how to put on the mask of generosity without ever getting too close. But fate had other plans. After the speeches and formalities, Alexander was led through the pediatric wing. Children in colorful gowns clutched teddy bears, their eyes lighting up as volunteers handed them toys and balloons. Alexander, tall and intimidating, felt like a stranger dropped into a world too fragile for him. He offered polite smiles, signed a few checks, and was about to retreat when he heard a soft voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir." He turned. Standing there was a girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with messy braids and eyes that seemed too wise for her age. She wore a hospital bracelet on her thin wrist, and her hands clutched a drawing, a crayon sketch of a sun and 2 stick figures holding hands. She stared at him, unafraid, unlike the others who usually whispered about the CEO. "Yes," he said, his tone softer than usual. She tilted her head, studying him with a bold curiosity. "Are you lonely?" The question hit him harder than any deal gone wrong, harder than any press attack. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "What makes you ask that?" She shrugged, holding out the drawing. "Because I'm lonely too. And you look like me." He looked at her, truly looked at her, the small frame, the tired but determined eyes, the way she hugged her paper like it was her treasure. No one had dared speak to him like that in years. For a moment, his throat tightened. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she said, smiling faintly. "Will you be my friend?" The world stopped. Cameras clicked in the background, people chatted, but Alexander felt none of it. He felt only the sincerity in her words, the way she offered friendship without agenda, without fear, without caring who he was. He wasn't a CEO to her. He was just a lonely man. Something cracked open inside him. He crouched down so his eyes met hers. "Yes, Lila. I'd like that very much." Her smile widened, and she pressed the drawing into his hand. "Now you're not alone anymore." It was the smallest act, yet it pierced through years of isolation like sunlight breaking storm clouds. From that day, Alexander kept visiting the hospital. At first, his staff assumed it was good PR, a way to polish his image. But this wasn't for cameras. He came quietly, without reporters, often bringing books, puzzles, or just his time. And always, he looked for Lila. She was battling a heart condition that kept her in and out of the hospital, yet her spirit was unbreakable. She told him stories of her imaginary adventures, asked endless questions about the world outside, and laughed with a purity he had forgotten existed. Alexander, who once feared silence, now found peace sitting beside her, even when words weren't spoken. One day, she asked, "Why don't you have friends?" He hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because sometimes, when you have too much, people don't see you. They see what you can give them. And after a while, it's easier to be alone." Lila thought for a moment. "That's silly. I don't want your stuff. I just like you." No one had said that to him in years. Weeks turned into months. Alexander rearranged his schedule just to make time for her. For the first time in decades, he laughed, really laughed, at silly jokes. He learned to draw lopsided suns, to color outside the lines, to be human again. His board of directors noticed the change. Their once cold, driven CEO was smiling in meetings, softer in tone, even kinder in decisions. They didn't know it was because of a little girl with braids and crayons. But life is never without tests. One evening, Alexander arrived to find Lila's bed empty. Panic clawed at him until a nurse explained she had taken a turn for the worse and was in intensive care. He wasn't family, but he begged to see her. When he entered the room, machines beeped steadily, and her tiny body seemed even smaller under the sheets. Yet when she saw him, she whispered, "You came." "I'll always come," he said, holding her hand. For the first time in decades, tears slipped down his face. "You're my only real friend." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Then don't be lonely anymore. Make other friends too. Promise?" His voice broke. "I promise." In the days that followed, Alexander did everything he could, donating to research, hiring specialists, sparing no expense. But money couldn't fix everything. What it could do, though, was give her time. Months later, she was strong enough to leave the hospital for short visits. And when she did, Alexander was there, waiting. He took her to see the city skyline, to ride in a limousine that made her giggle, to eat ice cream on the steps of his glass tower. He showed her a world she had only drawn in crayons, and she showed him what it meant to live. The world eventually caught wind of their unlikely friendship. Photos of the stern CEO laughing with a little girl melted the internet. But Alexander didn't care about the headlines. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Years later, when Lila grew strong enough for surgery that finally mended her fragile heart, Alexander was in the waiting room, pacing like a nervous father. When the doctor finally came out with a smile and said, "She's going to be okay," Alexander broke down, sobbing with relief. From then on, he wasn't just a CEO. He became a mentor to countless children, funding programs not just with money, but with presence. He visited schools, orphanages, hospitals, places he once would have sent only a check. But most of all, he kept his promise to Lila. He made friends. Real ones. And every time loneliness whispered at night, he looked at the framed crayon drawing she had given him, the sun, and two stick figures holding hands. Beneath it, in a child's handwriting, were the words that had changed his life forever. "Will you be my friend?" Alexander Reed, the man who once had everything but love, smiled softly. He was no longer alone.